There is a moment in every person's life when they realize that the path they are walking is no longer theirs. It might come quietly, like a whisper in the middle of the night. Or it might strike suddenly, in the middle of a conversation, at work, in a relationship, in a place you thought you belonged. A voice rises from within and says, "This isn't me. This isn't who I was meant to be." That voice is the beginning of individuation. And once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. You cannot go back to sleep. Carl Jung described individuation as the process of becoming whole, the unfolding of the self into its true form. But what he also understood is that this process requires something many of us resist with all our might: separation. To find yourself, you must be willing to lose what is false. To become whole, you must be willing to step away from the crowd. And that is why a chosen man, a chosen woman, always walks alone. Now, I know the word alone can feel heavy. It carries with it images of isolation, of rejection, of being unloved. But when I say alone, I don't mean unloved. I don't mean unwanted. I mean that you reach a point in your journey where you can no longer live a life dictated by the expectations of others. And in that moment, you must walk a different road. Not because you don't care, but because you finally do. You care enough about your soul to stop betraying it. From childhood, most of us are taught to adapt, to play roles. We're told, be a good girl. Be a strong boy. Be the one who makes us proud. Don't dream too big. Stay practical. Don't rock the boat. And we listen, because we want love, we want safety, we want belonging. So we put on the mask. We play the part. And in return, we get applause. We get approval. But somewhere deep down, there's a voice that whispers, "This isn't you." And that whisper is the seed of your real life. Here's what Jung knew: if you ignore that voice, you split yourself in two. The outer mask goes on living, smiling, working, pleasing. But the inner self begins to starve. And over time, that starvation shows up as anxiety, depression, restlessness, even illness. Because the soul cannot be silenced forever. It will demand to be heard, whether through quiet longing or through pain. The chosen man walks alone because he dares to answer that voice. He dares to say, "I will no longer abandon myself for the comfort of others." And make no mistake, that choice is costly. When you step off the path of conformity, people will notice. Some will feel threatened. Some will pull away. They'll say you've changed. And they're right. You have. You are shedding what was never yours to begin with. And here's the paradox: what feels like loss at first is actually the beginning of gain. Because when you no longer need to bend yourself into shapes that don't fit, you begin to discover the shape of your own soul. And yes, it may be different from what your family expected, from what your community wanted, from what the culture rewarded. But that difference is exactly what makes you chosen. The chosen man does not mirror the world around him. He reflects the truth within him. Now, let me pause here. Because I want you to feel the weight of this. There is no greater betrayal than abandoning yourself. People leaving you is not the deepest wound. You leaving yourself, that is the wound that scars the soul. And so individuation requires a sacred kind of courage, the courage to separate, to stand apart, to say yes to yourself even when it means others may say no to you. And I'll tell you something else: solitude, when embraced, is not emptiness. It is fullness. In solitude, you hear your own voice clearly. In solitude, you face the shadows you've been running from. And though it is hard, though it can feel unbearable at times, what you discover in that solitude is the seed of your real life. The seed of the person you were always meant to be. But individuation is only the first reason the chosen man walks alone. There is another, just as profound, just as challenging. Because once you begin to live from your authentic self, something else happens. You begin to see. And seeing, my friends, is both a gift and a burden. When you walk awake, you cannot unsee the patterns that shape human life. You notice the lies people tell themselves just to get by. You notice the dysfunction in your family that others pretend isn't there. You notice the injustices in society that people have normalized. You notice the opportunities for growth that everyone else dismisses as impossible. You notice. You see. And once you see, you cannot go back to blindness. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of the visionary, the one who perceives truths beyond the collective. To see clearly is to stand apart. Because clarity often disturbs those who would rather live comfortably in illusion. And so, the chosen man bears the burden of vision. It is not easy to carry what others cannot yet bear. It is not easy to live with awareness in a world that prefers distraction. Sometimes, the visionary is mocked. Sometimes, she is rejected. Sometimes, he is ignored. History is full of examples, prophets, artists, thinkers who were ridiculed in their time only to be celebrated later. Why? Because they saw before others could see. To carry a vision is to live in tension. You are standing between what is and what could be. You feel the gap. And that gap can be lonely. But it is also sacred. Because vision is the seed of transformation. And someone has to carry it, even when others are not ready. This is why solitude is not only about self-discovery. It is also about strengthening your capacity to hold vision. In solitude, you learn to trust what you see, even when others doubt it. In solitude, you learn to cultivate patience, to wait for the moment when the world is ready for what you already know. In solitude, you learn that your worth is not dependent on applause, because often, applause comes late. But here is the gift hidden in the burden: vision gives your life meaning. To see what others cannot see is to carry a light in the darkness. And even if that light sets you apart, it also guides you forward. So yes, the chosen man walks alone. But he does not walk in despair. He walks with purpose. He walks with truth. He walks with a power greater than approval. And in time, he realizes he was never truly alone at all. Because when you are faithful to your authentic self, when you honor the vision entrusted to you, you walk with life itself. You walk with God. You walk with something eternal. And that, my friends, is the secret. The loneliness of the chosen path is only temporary. The wholeness it brings is eternal. So if you hear that voice tonight, if you feel that whisper calling you to separate from the noise, do not be afraid. Step onto the path. Dare to walk alone. For in walking alone, you will find yourself. And in finding yourself, you will find everything. There is something no one tells you about the path of becoming. It is not only about breaking away from the crowd, and it is not only about carrying the burden of vision. It is also about what happens in the silence when the applause is gone, when the voices around you fade, and you are left with yourself. That silence, what so many of us rush to avoid, is where the chosen man, the chosen woman, is shaped. Because loneliness, when embraced, is not weakness. It is the beginning of strength. Now, I know when I say loneliness, some of you immediately feel a sting. We think of loneliness as emptiness, as rejection, as the evidence that we are unloved. But Jung saw it differently. He knew that the individual who dares to separate from the collective, who dares to follow the path of individuation, will almost certainly face loneliness. And yet, that very loneliness is the crucible in which character is formed. Think about your own life. Think of the times when you grew the most. Not the easy times, not the times when everything was going your way, but the seasons when you had to sit with pain, when you had to wrestle with questions no one else could answer for you. Those moments, as unbearable as they felt, carved you into someone stronger, wiser, deeper. That is the paradox. Loneliness feels like abandonment, but in truth, it is initiation. Every hero's journey has this stage. Jung studied myth, and he saw that every story of transformation includes the moment when the hero must go alone into the wilderness. Think of Moses on the mountain, Jesus in the desert, Buddha under the tree. Think of artists who created masterpieces no one understood in their time, scientists who pursued discoveries others mocked. What do they all have in common? They faced the silence. They endured the solitude. And in that space, they found strength no crowd could ever give them. Now, loneliness doesn't feel noble when you're in it. It feels heavy. It feels like the world has forgotten you. It feels like maybe you've made a mistake in daring to follow your path. But if you can sit in that loneliness long enough, if you can resist the temptation to run back to the crowd just to fill the silence, something miraculous happens. The loneliness begins to change. It begins to open. What felt like emptiness becomes space, space for truth, space for healing, space for your real self to emerge. You see, most people never get there because they escape too soon. The silence feels unbearable, so they numb themselves, they distract themselves, they return to masks and roles. But the chosen learn to stay. They learn to breathe through the loneliness, to let it do its work. And in that surrender, they discover something profound. Loneliness is not the absence of connection. It is the gateway to the deepest connection of all, the connection with the self, the connection with life itself, the connection with the divine. That is why the chosen grow strong. Not because they were born stronger, not because life was easier for them, but because they endured the loneliness and let it become their teacher. They let it strip away illusions. They let it show them who they really are. And once you know who you are in the silence, no crowd, no critic, no circumstance can take that strength away from you. And yet, strength is not the end of the journey. Strength is the foundation for something even greater. Because once you have been refined in solitude, once you have found your own center, you are no longer just surviving, you are ready to create. And this is where we come to the destiny of the outsider. The chosen man, the chosen woman, is not set apart only to endure. They are set apart to bring something new into the world. Jung believed that those who walk outside the collective carry within them the seeds of renewal. They are the ones who see differently, who feel deeply, who imagine what has not yet been imagined. And yes, that difference is what made them outsiders. But it is also what makes them creators. Look at history. Look at every great breakthrough, every work of art that changed the way we see, every idea that altered the course of humanity. Almost always, it came from someone on the margins. Someone who refused to live by the script. Someone who chose to walk alone. The world calls them strange, rebellious, difficult. But what they are, in truth, is necessary. Because without outsiders, the collective never evolves. Without chosen ones, the culture never grows. And so the destiny of the chosen is not only to endure loneliness, not only to bear vision, but to create. To bring forth something new that the world didn't even know it was waiting for. That is why the chosen are both feared and needed. Because they disrupt. They challenge. They awaken. They remind us that life is larger, deeper, richer than we have settled for. But here's the thing. To fulfill that destiny requires courage. Because creation is risky. To bring something new into the world is to invite misunderstanding, criticism, even rejection. People resist what they don't understand. They mock what threatens their comfort. And yet, if you have been prepared by loneliness, if you have been strengthened in solitude, you will not crumble under their rejection. You will know that your worth does not depend on their approval. You will know that what you carry is bigger than the opinions of the crowd. And when that happens, when you finally step into your creative destiny, you become a vessel for something greater than yourself. It is no longer just about you. It is about the life that wants to flow through you. It is about the wisdom, the art, the truth that wants to be born into the world through your courage. And that, my friends, is the calling of the chosen. To walk alone, yes. To endure loneliness, yes. To carry vision, yes. But ultimately, to create. To create not only for themselves, but for all of us. Because every time one person dares to live authentically, dares to bring their unique gift into the world, all of humanity is lifted a little higher. So do not despise your loneliness. Do not curse your solitude. Do not fear your difference. They are not signs that you are broken. They are signs that you are chosen. Because in the end, the path of the chosen is not about isolation. It is about transformation. It is about becoming strong enough, brave enough, free enough to bring forth what only you can bring. And when you do, you will see that you were never truly walking alone. You were walking with life itself. And that is the power, and the responsibility, of being chosen. So I leave you with this. If you find yourself on the outside, if you feel the sting of loneliness, if you carry a vision others do not yet understand, hold on. Trust the process. Let solitude shape you. Let strength rise in you. And then, when the time comes, create. Create boldly. Create unapologetically. Create as though the world depends on it. Because in many ways, it does. That is the destiny of the outsider. That is the legacy of the chosen.